When power meets kindness, the October wind howled through downtown Chicago, carrying the sharp scent of Lake Michigan and the promise of an early winter. Riley Morgan pulled her second-hand coat tighter as she rushed down Michigan Avenue, her worn sneakers splashing through puddles that reflected the golden glow of streetlights. She was already 20 minutes late to the Hartwell Foundation Gala, and her best friend Jamie was probably wondering if she'd chickened out. "I can't believe I let you talk me into this," Riley muttered into her phone. Dodging a group of tourists, taking selfies in front of the water tower. "I don't belong at some fancy charity event with Chicago's elite. You belong anywhere your big heart takes you." Jamie's voice crackled through the speaker. "Besides, you've been running that community center on pennies and prayers for 3 years. It's time someone with actual money noticed." Riley sighed, stopping at the corner to catch her breath. Through the glass doors of the Ritz-Carlton, she could see a sea of evening gowns and tailored suits, champagne flutes, catching the light like tiny stars. She looked down at her simple navy dress, the nicest thing she owned, purchased from a thrift store in Lincoln Park. "I'm going in," she said, more to convince herself than Jamie. "That's my girl. Now go charm some millionaires." The mistake that changed everything, the ballroom was overwhelming. Crystal chandeliers hung from gilded ceilings, and waiters glided through the crowd with trays of hors d'oeuvres that probably cost more than Riley's monthly grocery budget. She grabbed a glass of water from a passing server and tried to blend into the background near a towering arrangement of white orchids. That's when she saw him, a man in an impeccably tailored black suit, stood alone by the bar, his sharp jawline and steel blue eyes fixed on his phone. His dark hair was styled perfectly, and something about his posture screamed authority. But it was the slight frown on his face, the way his shoulders carried invisible weight, that caught Riley's attention. He looked lonely in a room full of people. "Excuse me," Riley approached with a warm smile, thinking he might be another volunteer coordinator. "I'm Riley Morgan. I'm here representing the West Side Community Center. Are you with one of the sponsoring organizations?" The man looked up slowly, one dark eyebrow arching. His eyes swept over her with an intensity that made her heart skip. "You could say that. Great. I was hoping to connect with people who care about community development. We work with single parents and at-risk youth, providing after-school programs and job training." Riley's enthusiasm bubbled over, her nervousness forgotten. "I know this might be forward, but would you be interested in touring our facility sometime? We could really use mentors with real-world business experience." A flicker of something crossed his face. Amusement? Surprise? "You think I have business experience?" "Well, you carry yourself like someone who knows what they're doing," Riley said honestly. "And you're at a foundation gala, so you obviously care about giving back." Before he could respond, a woman in a glittering silver dress appeared at his elbow. "Mr. Hartwell, the mayor would like a word about the Riverfront Development Project." Riley's stomach dropped. Mr. Hartwell, as in Dominic Hartwell, as in the host of this entire event, as in the billionaire whose face had been on the cover of Chicago Business Journal last month with the headline, "The Man Who Never Smiles." "Oh my God," Riley whispered, her face burning. "You're him. You're the Dominic Hartwell." His lips twitched, almost forming a smile. "Guilty. I just asked a billionaire if he had business experience." Riley wanted the marble floor to swallow her whole. "I'm so sorry. I should have recognized you. I just thought you looked kind of sad standing here alone. And I talk too much when I'm nervous, and now I'm rambling. And please forget I exist." She turned to flee, but his voice stopped her. "Wait." Riley froze, slowly turning back. Dominic was studying her with those penetrating blue eyes, and for the first time that evening the hardness in his expression had softened. "What's your name again?" "Riley. Riley Morgan." "Riley Morgan," he repeated, as if testing how it sounded. "You said you run a community center."
At Corin.
"With my friend Jamie, we don't actually own it. We just keep it alive through grants and donations and a lot of prayers." "And you came here tonight hoping to find funding?" Riley nodded, feeling suddenly vulnerable under his gaze. Dominic handed his phone to the woman in silver. "Cancel my meeting with the mayor? I want to hear more about this community center." Coffee and confessions 2 hours later. Riley found herself in a quiet corner of the hotel's lounge, sitting across from Dominic Hartwell and wondering if she'd somehow slipped into an alternate universe. He'd ditched his tie, unbuttoned his collar, and actually ordered coffee instead of champagne. "So let me get this straight," Dominic said, leaning back in the leather chair. "You're running programs for 150 families on a budget of $80,000 a year? $75,000 this year? Actually, we lost a major donor." Riley wrapped her hands around her coffee mug. "But we make it work. The kids don't care if the building is old or if we can't afford new basketball hoops. They just need a safe place to go after school." "Why do you do it?" The question was simple, but something in his tone suggested he genuinely wanted to know. "Because I was one of those kids once," Riley said softly. "My mom raised me alone after my dad left. We lived in 3 different shelters before I was 10, but there was this one place, the Northside Youth Center, that gave us hope. The director there, Miss Patricia, she saw something in me. She helped my mom get job training, helped me with homework, made sure I never went to bed hungry." Riley met his eyes. "She died 5 years ago. But before she did, she told me that kindness is the only currency that multiplies when you spend it. I've been trying to live by that ever since." Dominic was quiet for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was rougher than before. "I built my entire empire on the opposite philosophy. That sentiment is weakness. That trust is a liability. That the only thing you can count on is a signed contract." "Sounds lonely," Riley said gently. His jaw tightened. "It's practical." "Maybe," she conceded. "But practical doesn't keep you warm at night." Dominic's eyes flashed with something Riley couldn't quite read. Pain? Anger? Recognition. "You don't know anything about me, Miss Morgan?" "You're right. I don't." Riley stood, sensing she'd overstepped. "Thank you for the coffee and for listening. I should get going." She made it 3 steps before his voice cut through the quiet lounge. "How much do you need?" Riley turned. "Excuse me? To keep your center running, how much do you actually need?" Her heart hammered. "We could do incredible things with $200,000 a year. Expand our tutoring program, hire a full-time counselor, fix the roof that leaks every time it rains." Dominic pulled out his phone and typed something. "Done." "What?" "I'm wiring $250,000 to your center tomorrow, and I want to see it. The facility, the programs, everything." Riley's eyes filled with tears. "Why? Why would you do this?" Dominic stood, and suddenly he was close enough that she could smell his cologne, something expensive and woodsy. His blue eyes held hers, and for just a moment, the ice around them seemed to crack. "Because someone just reminded me that I used to believe in more than contracts," he said quietly. "And because you looked at me tonight like I was just a person, not a checkbook. That doesn't happen often in my world." Riley's breath caught. "Mr. Hartwell, I mean. Dominic, I don't know what to say. And don't say anything. Just promise me one thing." "What?" A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Next time you mistake someone for a waiter, maybe check their name tag first." Riley laughed, a real, genuine laugh that echoed through the lounge and made Dominic's smile grow just a fraction wider, the drive home outside. The October wind had turned brutal, but Riley barely felt it as she climbed into the Uber. Her phone buzzed with a text from Jamie. "How did it go? Did you talk to anyone important?" Riley typed back, her fingers trembling. "I accidentally asked Dominic Hartwell if he had business experience, and then made him smile. I think I broke Chicago's most famous billionaire." 3 dots appeared immediately. "What?" Riley leaned her head against the cold window, watching the city lights blur past. Somewhere in that glittering skyline, Dominic Hartwell was probably returning to his penthouse. Alone, despite being surrounded by wealth and power, she wondered if anyone had ever told him he deserved to be happy. As the car crossed the Chicago River, Riley's phone buzzed again. An unknown number. "This is Dominic. I'll be at your center Monday at 9 a.m. Don't clean up on my account. I want to see it exactly as it is." And Riley. "Thank you for tonight. I haven't had a real conversation in longer than I care to admit." Riley read the message 3 times. her heart doing strange acrobatic flips in her chest. "You're welcome, Mr. Hartwell," she typed back. Then deleted it. Then tried again. "See you Monday." And it's just Riley. Titles make me nervous. His response came instantly. "Then it's just Dominic. Formality is overrated." Riley smiled at her phone, wondering what she'd just started behind the tinted windows of his town car. Dominic stared at the same exchange, something unfamiliar stirring in his chest. His assistant Peter glanced in the rearview mirror. "Good evening, sir?" "Strange evening," Dominic corrected, his thumb hovering over Riley's message. "But not bad." For the first time in 6 years, since the day his fiancée had walked out with half his company's secrets and not a shred of remorse, Dominic allowed himself to wonder if maybe, just maybe, there were still people in the world worth trusting, and one of them had just called him sad and lonely to his face, then made him laugh about it. Monday morning revelations, the West Side Community Center looked exactly like what it was. A dream held together by duct tape and determination. The brick building sat squeezed between a laundromat and a corner grocery, its faded blue paint peeling in strips that revealed decades of Chicago weather damage. But the hand-painted mural on the side wall, created by local kids, showed a rainbow of handprints reaching toward a bright sun with the words, "Every hand matters," written in bold letters. Riley arrived at 7:30 a.m., 2 hours before Dominic was scheduled to appear. She couldn't help herself. She'd spent all weekend replaying their conversation, wondering if she'd dreamed the entire thing. Rich men, like Dominic Hartwell, didn't just promise $250,000 to strangers they met at galas. They certainly didn't text afterward asking to visit rundown community centers in neglected neighborhoods. "Stop pacing. You're making me dizzy," Jamie said from behind the front desk, where she was organizing intake forms. Jamie Park was everything Riley wasn't: organized, skeptical, and completely immune to romantic notions. Her black hair was pulled into a no-nonsense ponytail, and her dark eyes tracked Riley's nervous movements with amused concern. What if he changed his mind? What if he looked up our tax records and decided we're too small to bother with? Riley adjusted the fresh flowers she'd placed on the windowsill for the third time. "Then we keep doing what we've always done, surviving." Jamie stood and grabbed Riley's shoulders. "But something tells me Mr. Ice King isn't the type to back out of commitments." "You said he seemed different. He seemed human," Riley corrected softly. "Underneath all that armor?" At exactly 9 a.m., a sleek black Mercedes pulled up outside. But instead of a driver opening the door, Dominic emerged alone, dressed in dark jeans, charcoal sweater, and surprisingly worn leather boots. He looked younger without the suit, more approachable, though his blue eyes still carried that calculating sharpness as he surveyed the building. Riley met him at the door, a professional smile firmly in place. "Welcome to the West Side Community Center. You're right on time." "I'm always on time," Dominic said, but there was a hint of warmth in his voice. "Punctuality is respect in action, and you're going to love our kids. They show up for tutoring, even when it means missing their favorite TV shows." Riley held the door open. "Fair warning, this place doesn't look like much, but it has heart, a tour that changed everything. Next to ours transformed something fundamental in Dominic Hartwell's carefully constructed worldview." Riley walked him through cramped classrooms where donated computers from 2010 hummed alongside textbooks held together with packing tape. She introduced him to Miss Angela, retired teacher who volunteered 3 days a week teaching reading to children who struggled in overcrowded public schools. In the small kitchen, Mrs. Rodriguez prepared snacks for the after-school program, stretching a grocery budget that would make most people weep. But it was the gymnasium that stopped Dominic in his tracks. 20 kids, ranging from 8 to 14, were running basketball drills under the supervision of a college student named Trevor. The wooden floor was scratched and uneven. One of the hoops had no net, and the walls needed paint desperately. But the laughter, the shouts of encouragement, the pure joy radiating from those children. It was something Dominic hadn't witnessed in his polished, climate-controlled office towers. "That's Marcus," Riley said, pointing to a lanky 12-year-old with impressive ball-handling skills. His mom works 2 jobs. He comes here every day after school because the alternative is an empty apartment. Last year, his grades were failing. Now he's on the honor roll. Because of basketball? Dominic asked, because someone noticed him. Trevor makes him do his homework before he touches a ball. Mrs. Rodriguez makes sure he eats something healthy. Miss Angela helps him with reading comprehension. Riley's voice grew thick with emotion. It's not about one thing, Dominic. It's about showing up consistently and saying you matter until they believe it. Dominic watched Marcus sink a perfect 3-pointer. Saw the pride on the boy's face, the high fives from his teammates. Something twisted in his chest, uncomfortable and unfamiliar. I was that kid once, he said suddenly. Riley turned, surprised. What? Different circumstances, same feeling. Dominic's jaw tightened. My father left when I was 9. My mother worked herself to exhaustion trying to keep us afloat. I spent most afternoons alone in our apartment teaching myself chess and telling myself I didn't need anyone. But you did need someone, Riley said gently. I had my grandfather. He ran a small construction company and let me sweep floors after school. He taught me that work was the only reliable thing in life, that depending on people was dangerous, but depending on yourself was power. Dominic's voice dropped. He died when I was 17. Heart attack on a job site. After that, I made sure I never needed anyone again. Riley's hand found his arm, a light touch that somehow anchored him. That must have been so lonely. It was practical, Dominic corrected. But the words sounded hollow even to his own ears. Before Riley could respond, Marcus noticed them watching and jogged over. Basketball tucked under his arm. Miss Riley, is this your boyfriend? The boy asked with the blunt honesty only children possess. Riley's face turned crimson. Marcus, this is Mr. Hartwell. He's a businessman who's interested in supporting our center. Marcus sized Dominic up with suspicious eyes. You rich? Marcus. Riley gasped, but Dominic smiled. Really smiled. For the first time since entering the building. Yes, I am. Cool. Can you fix our roof? It leaks on the computers when it rains. I think I can manage that and get us new basketballs. These ones are old, Marcus. That's enough, Riley interjected, mortified. But Dominic knelt down to Marcus's level, meeting the boy's eyes with unexpected gentleness. I'll make you a deal. I'll fix everything that needs fixing here, and you keep getting those good grades. Sound fair? Marcus's face lit up brighter than the gymnasium's fluorescent lights. For real? I don't make promises I can't keep. The boy stuck out his hand, and Dominic shook it solemnly, as if sealing $1 million contract. As Marcus ran back to his game, Dominic stood slowly, and Riley caught the sheen of moisture in his eyes before he blinked it away. Thank you, she whispered. For what? For seeing them. Really seeing them. Unexpected invitation, they ended up in Riley's tiny office, which was really just a converted storage closet with a desk, 2 folding chairs, and walls covered in children's artwork. Dominic looked comically out of place, his broad shoulders barely fitting in the cramped space, but he didn't complain. I want to do more than write a check, he said, pulling out his phone. I want to establish a permanent endowment, enough to fund operations, capital improvements, and program expansion for at least 10 years. Riley's coffee cup slipped from her hand, splashing across the already stained carpet. Dominic, that's millions of dollars. 3 million, to be exact. He showed her the screen where he'd been calculating figures. Properly invested, it should generate enough annual income to cover everything you need, plus growth. Why? The question burst from Riley's lips. Why would you do this for people you don't even know? Dominic set his phone down and leaned forward, elbows on his knees. The space between them shrunk to nothing, and suddenly, Riley was acutely aware of how blue his eyes were, how the morning light caught the silver threading through his dark hair at his temples. Because you were right, he said quietly. I am lonely. I've spent the last 6 years building walls so high that I forgot what sunlight feels like. I thought the best revenge against the people who hurt me was becoming too successful to touch, too powerful to need anyone.
Oh.
What changed? A woman in a thrift store dress told me I looked sad and didn't apologize for caring. His lips quirked. And she made me remember that I used to want to build things that mattered, not just things that made money. Riley's heart thundered so loudly, she was certain he could hear it. Dominic, I don't know what to say. Say you'll have dinner with me. Tomorrow night? Somewhere quiet where we can talk without interruption? Is this a business dinner? Riley asked carefully. No. His gaze held hers with devastating honesty. This is me hoping that the first person to make me feel something real in 6 years might consider giving me a chance. Riley knew she should be cautious. Dominic Hartwell was Chicago's most eligible bachelor. A man whose last relationship had ended in a spectacular scandal that made headlines for months. Getting involved with him would be complicated, potentially heartbreaking, and absolutely terrifying. But she'd spent her entire life playing it safe, building walls of her own to protect a heart that had been disappointed too many times. Maybe it was time to be brave. Okay, she said softly. Dinner, but somewhere normal. No 5-star restaurants where I'll mispronounce everything on the menu. Dominic's smile transformed his entire face, erasing years of practiced coldness. Deal? I know a place. The storm breaks the news hit the following morning. Riley was preparing lesson plans when Jamie burst into the office, phone in hand. Face pale. You need to see this. The Chicago Tribune's business section featured a photograph of Riley and Dominic talking in the center's gymnasium. The headline read, Ice King melts for mystery woman? Dominic Hartwell's new charity case, or something more? Riley's stomach plummeted as she read the article, which speculated wildly about their relationship, questioned her motives, and included quotes from anonymous sources suggesting she was a gold digger targeting Chicago's wealthiest bachelor. This is a nightmare, Riley whispered. Her phone exploded with calls. Her mother, her college roommate, reporters requesting interviews, and then Dominic. Don't answer any questions, he said immediately, his voice tight with controlled fury. My legal team is already drafting responses. I'm so sorry, Riley. I should have anticipated this. It's not your fault. Yes, it is. Being associated with me comes with scrutiny. I should have warned you. Riley closed her eyes, fighting tears. Maybe we should cancel dinner. Silence stretched across the line, heavy with disappointment. Is that what you want? Dominic finally asked. No, Riley admitted. But I don't want to be your charity case. I don't want people thinking I'm using you, or that everything we're building here is somehow tainted. Then let me fix this. You can't control what people think. Dominic, watch me. The press conference by 3 p.m. Dominic had called a press conference at Hartwell Industries headquarters. Riley watched the live stream from her office. Heart in her throat, Dominic stood at the podium, looking every inch the powerful CEO in his navy suit. But his expression was softer than usual as he addressed the packed room of journalists. Here to address the speculation about my personal life and my involvement with the West Side Community Center, he began, voice steady. First, I want to make something clear. Riley Morgan is not a charity case. She's an extraordinary woman, doing extraordinary work with limited resources and unlimited heart. He paused, making eye contact with various reporters. 6 years ago, I made a decision to close myself off from meaningful connections because I was hurt by someone I trusted. I convinced myself that isolation was strength, that emotional detachment was wisdom. I was wrong. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Meeting Riley reminded me that vulnerability isn't weakness, that opening your heart to someone, while risky, is also the only way to truly live. The Westside Community Center will receive full funding from the Hartwell Foundation because it deserves support, not because of any personal relationship. But I want to be transparent with all of you. Dominic's voice dropped, becoming more intimate despite the microphones. I am pursuing a personal relationship with Riley Morgan because she makes me want to be a better man. Because she sees people, really sees them, in a way I'd forgotten how to do. And if that makes me vulnerable to speculation and gossip, so be it. Some risks are worth taking. The room erupted in questions, but Dominic simply stepped away from the podium. Riley's phone rang immediately. Did you mean all that? she asked, tears streaming down her face. Every word. Dominic's voice was rough with emotion. I know this is fast, and I know I'm probably scaring you. But I'm tired of pretending I don't feel something real for the first time in years. I'm scared too, Riley admitted. Terrified, actually. Then let's be terrified together. Have dinner with me tonight, Riley. Let me prove that I'm worth the risk. Riley looked around her tiny office, at the children's drawings on the walls. At the stack of bills she'd been struggling to pay. She thought about Marcus and his perfect three-pointer. About Miss Angela's patient reading lessons. About every person who'd told her that hoping for more was foolish. And she thought about Dominic's eyes when he'd watched the kids play basketball. The crack in his armor when he'd talked about his lonely childhood. The courage it took to stand in front of cameras and admit he was learning to feel again. Okay, she whispered. Let's be brave together. The date Dominic picked her up at 7 in a regular sedan, no driver, wearing jeans and a soft gray Henley that made his blue eyes even more striking. He drove them to a small Italian restaurant in Little Italy, the kind of place with checkered tablecloths and waiters who'd worked there for 30 years. My grandfather used to bring me here, Dominic explained as they settled into a corner booth. After he died, I couldn't come back. It hurt too much. Why tonight? Because you make me want to remember the good parts of my past, not just the painful ones. They talked for hours. About Riley's childhood in shelters, about Dominic's climb from poverty to power, about her dreams of opening centers across the city, about his fear of trusting anyone with the truth of who he really was beneath the success. I haven't told anyone about my grandfather in years, Dominic admitted over tiramisu. My ex-fiancée Vanessa, she knew the facts, but never understood what he meant to me. She was more interested in the man I'd become than the boy I'd been. What happened with her? Riley asked gently. Dominic's jaw tightened. She left me for my business rival 3 days before our wedding. Took proprietary information with her, nearly destroyed a major deal. But the worst part wasn't the betrayal of trust. It was realizing I'd been so focused on building an empire that I'd never actually connected with her on a real level. We were two people playing roles, not two souls actually seeing each other. I'm sorry that happened to you. Not anymore. Dominic reached across the table, his fingers brushing hers. If it hadn't, I might never have been standing alone at that gala, looking sad enough for a beautiful woman to notice.
Alice.
Riley's cheeks flushed. I wasn't trying to flirt, I know. That's what made it perfect. As they walked back to his car, Chicago's autumn wind whipping around them, Dominic suddenly stopped. I need to tell you something. And I need you to really hear me. Riley turned. Heart pounding at the intensity in his expression. I know this is fast. I know we barely know each other, but I also know that I haven't felt this alive, this hopeful, since before my grandfather died. You've awakened something in me that I thought was permanently frozen. He stepped closer, his hand cupping her cheek. I don't know where this goes, Riley, but I want to find out. No contracts, no safety nets. Just two people being honest with each other. That's the scariest thing you could have said, Riley whispered. I know, and also the bravest. She rose on her toes and kissed him. Soft and tentative at first, then deeper as his arms wrapped around her waist. The kiss tasted like coffee and courage, like two broken people deciding that maybe together they could build something whole. When they finally pulled apart, both breathless, Dominic rested his forehead against hers. I'm going to mess this up sometimes, he warned. I've spent 6 years building walls. They won't come down overnight. I'm going to be stubborn and independent and probably drive you crazy, Riley countered. I'm counting on it. They stood there on the sidewalk, the city lights glittering around them. Two souls who'd been hiding for different reasons finally brave enough to be. Seeing the breaking point 3 months. Transformed everything and nothing, Dominic. Became a regular presence at the West Side Community Center. Showing up in jeans and work boots to help renovate the gymnasium, Riley spent weekends at his penthouse, slowly filling his minimalist spaces with warmth and laughter. They were building something real, something that terrified and exhilarated them both. But the past has a way of demanding payment. It happened on a freezing February morning. Riley was reviewing contractor bids for the center's new computer lab when her phone rang. Unknown number, Riley Morgan. A woman's voice, smooth and cultured. Speaking. This is Vanessa Whitmore. I believe you're dating my ex-fiance. Riley's blood turned to ice. She'd seen photos of Vanessa online. Tall, elegant, with auburn hair and the kind of beauty that belonged on magazine covers. Everything Riley wasn't. What do you want? To warn you, actually. Vanessa's tone was almost kind, which somehow made it worse. Dominic is wonderful at the beginning. Attentive, generous, passionate, but he's incapable of real intimacy. The moment you need him emotionally, it's the moment you become anything other than a perfect fantasy, he'll retreat behind his walls. I loved him for 3 years, and I never really knew him. That's not true, Riley said, but her voice wavered. Isn't it? Has he told you about his mother? About why he really can't trust love? Vanessa paused. Ask him about Christmas, Riley. Ask him why he spent it alone every year we were together, even though I begged him to let me in. The call ended, leaving Riley staring at her phone with a growing pit in her stomach. The confrontation that evening. Riley met Dominic at his penthouse. He'd cooked dinner, something he'd been learning to do, and the apartment smelled like garlic and wine. But Riley couldn't appreciate any of it. We need to talk, she said, setting down her bag. Dominic's smile faded. What's wrong? Vanessa called me today. His entire body went rigid. What did she say? She said you're incapable of real intimacy, that you retreat the moment things get difficult. Riley forced herself to meet his eyes. She said to ask you about Christmas and your mother. Silence stretched between them, heavy and suffocating. My mother didn't just work 2 jobs, Dominic finally said, his voice flat. She had severe depression. Some days she couldn't get out of bed. I learned to take care of myself because I had to. And when my grandfather died, she got worse. She'd forget to eat, forget I existed. The day after my 18th birthday, she checked herself into a psychiatric facility and told me she couldn't be my mother anymore, that I was better off without her. Riley's heart shattered. Dominic, I'm so sorry. I visited her every Christmas for 10 years, brought gifts, tried to make conversation while she stared at the wall. She died 3 years ago without ever really coming back to me. His jaw clenched. So yes, I spent Christmas alone. Because the alternative was sitting in a hospital room with a woman who'd stopped recognizing me as her son. Why didn't you tell me? Because I'm tired of being broken, Riley. The words exploded from him, raw and desperate. I'm tired of my past defining every relationship I try to have. I thought with you, I could just be the man I'm becoming, not the damaged kid I was. But I need to know all of you, Riley said, tears streaming down her face. Not just the parts you think are acceptable. I need you to trust me with the painful stuff too. I don't know how, Dominic admitted, and the vulnerability in his voice broke something open between them. I've spent my entire adult life making sure no one could hurt me again. And then you walked into my life, and suddenly, all I want is to let you in, but I don't know how to do that without falling apart. Riley closed the distance between them, taking his face in her hands, then fall apart. I'm here to catch you. What if you can't? What if I can? The healing they spent that night talking in ways they never had before. Dominic told her about the nightmares he still had, about the panic attacks that sometimes seized him in crowded rooms. Riley shared her own fears about abandonment and worthlessness that stemmed from years of instability. I'm not perfect, Riley, Dominic whispered as dawn light crept through the windows. I'm probably going to retreat sometimes. I'm probably going to push you away when I'm scared. And I'm probably going to be too stubborn, too idealistic, too much in every way, Riley countered. But maybe that's okay. Maybe love isn't about being perfect. Maybe it's about choosing each other even when it's hard. Dominic kissed her then, deep and desperate. Like a man who'd finally found home after years of wandering. 6 months later, the grand opening of the West Side. The community center's new wing fell on a brilliant August morning. The renovated building gleamed with fresh paint, new windows, and a state-of-the-art computer lab. But more importantly, it buzzed with life. Marcus, 13 and 6 inches taller, stood on the new basketball court demonstrating drills for younger kids. Miss Angela presided over a library filled with brand new books. Mrs. Rodriguez ran a commercial kitchen where she taught cooking classes to single mothers. And in the middle of it all, Riley stood beside Dominic, watching their shared dream come to life. "I have something for you," Dominic said, pulling a folder from his jacket. Riley opened it, her breath catching. Inside were architectural plans for 5 more community centers across Chicago, each one designed to serve underserved neighborhoods. The budget notation at the bottom made her head spin. $15 million over 5 years. "Dominic, this is incredible. But you've already done so much. These aren't from me alone." He pointed to the signature line. "I've established a foundation. You're listed as co-founder and director. This is our project, Riley. Together, why? Because you taught me that the best investment isn't in buildings or stocks. It's in people. In hope. In showing up consistently and saying you matter." He took her hands. "And because I'm tired of building empires alone, I want to build a life with you." Riley's eyes widened as Dominic knelt down, right there in the middle of the gymnasium, surrounded by the community they'd both fought so hard to serve. "I don't have a ring yet because I wanted to ask you first what kind you'd want. I don't have a perfect speech because perfection isn't real." His voice roughened with emotion. "But I have a heart that beats for you, Riley Morgan. A heart you've taught to feel again. Will you marry me?" The gymnasium erupted in cheers before Riley could even answer. Marcus started a chant of "Say yes. Say yes," while Miss Angela dabbed her eyes with a tissue, but Riley only saw Dominic. The man who'd spent years frozen in fear, now kneeling vulnerable and hopeful before her. "You're sure?" she asked, needing to hear it. "No doubts? No escape clauses?" "No contracts," Dominic confirmed, his blue eyes shining. "Just trust and love, and choosing each other every single day." "Then yes," Riley whispered, pulling him to his feet. 1,000 times yes. Their kiss was witnessed by 100 people who'd watched their story unfold. 2 wounded souls who'd found healing in each other's honesty. Epilogue, 2 years. Later, the Hartwell Morgan Community Foundation now operated 7 centers across Chicago and had plans for 10 more. Dominic had stepped back from daily operations at his company to focus on philanthropy. Discovering that building communities brought him more satisfaction than building skyscrapers ever had, Riley stood in the nursery of their brownstone, rocking their 3-month-old daughter, Grace Patricia. Named after the woman who'd first taught Riley about the power of kindness, Dominic appeared in the doorway. Tie loosened, carrying 2 mugs of tea. "She's finally sleeping," Riley whispered. "Good, then I can tell you what happened today." He handed her a mug and settled beside them. Marcus got into Northwestern on a full scholarship. Engineering program. Riley's eyes filled with happy tears. He did it. We did it. All of us together. Dominic wrapped his arm around his wife, looking down at their sleeping daughter. For years, he'd believed happiness was something other people experienced, that his childhood had permanently broken his capacity for joy. But Riley had taught him something more important than any business strategy, that love isn't a contract to be negotiated or a risk to be managed. It's a choice made daily, a vulnerability embraced willingly, a trust built brick by brick through honesty and patience. "I love you," he said softly. "Thank you for not giving up on me." "I love you too," Riley replied, resting her head on his shoulder. "Thank you for learning how to let me in." Outside, Chicago's summer evening painted the sky in shades of gold and rose. Inside, a family built not on perfection, but on persistent. Grace filled their home with laughter and hope. The Ice King had finally melted, not because someone forced him to change, but because someone loved him enough to make vulnerability feel like strength, and that made all the difference.